catalog search. My name is Jordan Fields. I am with Grow for Libraries, and I'm joined by Mark Noble, who did the development on this feature. But the person that you came here today to hear is Tara Wood from SWAN Library Services. Tara Wood is the User Experience Manager for SWAN, which is a consortium of 100 libraries in the Chicagoland area, where she led the migration to Aspen Discovery. Previously, she worked in universities and public libraries in user experience, library technology, and digital resources. She loves talking about discovery, UX design activities, and pizza. And without further ado, I do want to mention one other thing. We will be taking questions at the end of today's webinar. Within your little webinar profile, you should have a little chat bubble in the upper right-hand corner with a question mark. If you click on that, you'll have the opportunity to ask a question, or you can also upvote questions. So if there's one that you really want the answer to, please upvote it. And now I will stop sharing and hand it over to Tara.
Awesome, thank you, Jordan. And I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, hopefully you are all seeing my screen. And here is our agenda today. I'm going to give a brief background on how Search Interpreter came to be. I'll share a demo of the Patron experience, and then we'll go into configuration, both kind of a planning phase and then setup and testing. And there should be time at the end for Q&A. So how this came to be, we noticed even going into our discovery platform evaluation before you even selected out Aspen, that keyword loading searches often returns worse results across many discovery platforms. And in a lot of cases, the keyword loading that happens with our patrons are for formats. Our discovery and user experience advisory group with SWAN did a deep dive into a deep dive project into where areas where keyword searching could be better. And these were some of the examples that came directly out of the examples they pulled. So you see here, a lot of these are keyword searches that are loaded up with formats. We see these in our analytics, our search term analytics as well. And these searches will just often return bad results. But the solution is to strip out some of these terms for formats in this case and apply filters instead that are going to return better results than if the keyword was included in most cases. So I'm going to demonstrate what this looks like for patrons. So I've got here our test instance where we have Search Interpreter turned off, just actually for the specific search. And our test instance is being a little bit slow here. Of course, live demo. So you'll see I did my search, Wicked DVD. This is a real patron search, and it does not return what we would like. But if I type that same search into our production catalog, you'll see first things first are probably what our patrons are looking for, part 1 and part 2. And it's got that limit to DVDs and DVD Blu-ray combo, which is super nice. So how do we make this work? Let's dive into the configuration. So when Grow first built out Search Interpreter, the very first version, if I remember right, feel free to correct me, Mark or Jordan. The first version matched on the keyword, or matched on the filters terms, I should say, that already existed in Aspen. And we realized pretty quickly there would be a lot of exceptions, and a more flexible configuration was needed to allow libraries, consortia, library systems to set what's going to work best with their data. So I'm going to share how SWAN planned and set up that configuration. It is super flexible, which is great, but it may mean that you need to go through some of these planning steps as well. I'm also going to share our full configuration. If you just want to copy it, that's great. I've already shared it probably with some of you through Slack, so I don't mind that at all, but you might find that you need to tweak that for your purposes. So this is an image from just a spreadsheet, and not very beautiful or exciting spreadsheet. That's just a big dump of all of our search term data from Google Analytics. I want to say for the span of maybe a quarter or a couple months. And we just combed through this data to pull out things that would benefit from this search interpreter feature. So you see in here, there's a lot of these are video game formats. So that's something we pulled out immediately that we should handle. And we also conducted a joint meeting with our discovery and our cataloging user groups to brainstorm ideas. And those groups started out with a lot of ideas. They had, we could do this, we could do this. They were really excited. And then as we started diving into it, we realized we really needed to weed these down. Some of these ideas might actually make results worse. So that's sort of that, after that initial pulling out ideas, you'll need to most likely weed down some of the candidates and figure out what you're going to exclude. So we really try to rely on the mantra, what's going to help and what's going to hurt most of the time. You don't want to build your search interpreter settings around edge cases. Like this one title is really hard to find, and that's the one I'm going to build everything around on. You want it to help most of the time. So for example, we found applying a filter for book was going to hurt more than it was going to help most of the time. So we wanted to leave it out. There's just so many titles that include book, for example. So there's a couple ways that you can test these out. The big one we would do is we do it, like I said, we did a title search for book, and we saw, oh wow, there's like, I want to say it was like 60,000 results or something. It was a ton of results that had book in the title. So if that keyword gets stripped out, it's going to make results worse. So we don't want to do that. And then the other thing that you can do is, especially for us, we're working with library staff, and we wanted this to be grounded in what we could actually really do. So just doing an empty keyword filtered search and applying the facets that you want to see. You know, I know that I want to limit down to DVD and Blu-ray and an audience of, say, for example, juvenile. You know, you want to see what those results look like. And you can test it out in, you know, just with a straight up vanilla search. So now I'm going to get into that setup. The terms to skip interpreting. I've included screenshots here. I'm happy to bring up our actual, you know, Aspen administration. I thought the screenshots might be helpful if you want to refer to them later. And I'm kind of just going through them in order. So the top of the configuration is this terms to skip interpreting. It's actually kind of the last step in planning. It's going to be the exceptions to your rules. So you see here, hopefully, one of our exceptions is a kid's book about. That is a series. And if we stripped all of those terms out, it would be no one could find that series. So we wanted to exclude that particular series and make sure it will continue to show up in results. The next big section is formats and format categories. You could just turn this on, and in a lot of cases, it's going to help. We opted to skip several formats and format categories. If you're not super familiar, the format categories are those big buttons, books, movies, audiobooks, I think are the big ones up there. So we chose to skip several of the formats, and we're not processing the format categories at all. We wanted to be able to more surgically work with those keywords later in the configuration when we get to special terms, which is the fun part. And you can just list out, it's really nice in the configuration, it lists out all the formats you have. I believe that's going to be dynamic for your instance, so you can cherry pick those exact terms, paste them in, and, you know, move on. We opted not to apply any of the automatic settings for audiences, nonfiction, nonfiction. We're not applying the series search pages quite yet. If that's something we need to explore some more, but we left all those out, and I'll go into a little more why when we get into the special terms. You may find that you find these helpful. We just thought there were going to be a lot of instances where, for example, there's many titles with kid in the title that are actually adult titles. A big one is that I think of right now is the Liza Minnelli biography that's out. So no one will be able to find that if we'd applied this, unless of course we included it in our terms to skip. So there's a lot of creative ways you can deal with certain scenarios, but we decided we would handle those audiences a little differently. So we're not kind of uncheck that process audiences there, and I'll show you what we did in a bit. There are also, so now here we're in the special terms. This is where we really dedicated our time and energy and configuration, and I'm going to go into a couple different scenarios that we tackled here. So a few tips in general with the special terms. Remember first, you want to ignore those formats or audiences, any of those things that you want to apply instead here. Because if you've got those boxes checked for like process audiences, that's going to apply instead of these special terms, at least if that is still the case. That was what we experienced when we were first setting it up. And then you'll want to pay attention to order. The first match is going to apply, and then the subsequent matches will not. So for example, you'll see here like audiobooks would be above like kids audiobooks. We want otherwise that audiobooks filter might not apply. So you kind of have to play around with the order. There's some nice drag and drop sorting there that you can use to make sure the different keyword combinations apply the way that you would like. And then this is a weird phrase, so I'm going to try kind of say it and then rephrase it. So I find it's helpful to start with the facets you want to apply and then use regular expressions to build out all of the keyword combinations that would match those facets. So in other words, I know people want to do a search limited to books for kids. So I want a search that will filter by an audience of juvenile, a format category of books. But there's a lot of different keyword combinations people might use where they would expect that same facet to apply. Like kids books, children's books, books for kids. So then you can kind of tackle all the keywords once you decide all of these things all these keywords would do the same thing. You'll want to be aware of any facets you may have translated. So for us, we translated the phonograph format into vinyl record. So we have just a nice little translation there. If someone searches vinyl record, it will apply that phonograph format. And then I'm just going to note, we've only rolled out facets for the tackle audience language and that format category only. We haven't looked at subjects or words. There's a lot of other areas where we could be applying these keyword filters, and we just haven't gotten there yet. We're kind of doing a slow and steady rollout of keyword terms to try out. So here's some of the video game formats we added. A big shout out to Lucas McKeever at SWAN. He plugged all of these in. There's a ton of them. So for example, if you search PlayStation, it's going to apply filters for all possible PlayStation formats. If you search for PS5, that will return the PlayStation 5 format. And then video games return all the formats. And that used to be like a terrible search in the past. So we're so happy this has been a really, really, really helpful, but easy kind of to wrap your head around enhancement. We have the same for the languages. We just plugged in, I think we used our top 10 languages, and we included in Polish or that language in the language. I'm not going to attempt to speak Polish, but oops, sorry, skipped that a little bit. So we kind of went through the top 10 languages that are available in our collection, and our catalog is also has Polish and Spanish translations. So those are definitely languages we wanted to get in there to apply those language filters. All right, this is where the special terms gets maybe a little bit wild, but is super helpful. So Again, we chose to ignore those audience filters as a solo term. If you search for kid, it's not going to just apply a juvenile format. We decided that needs to be paired with a format. So kids books, kids movies, kids DVDs, kids Blu-rays. So we plugged in all those possible terms and used regular expressions just to help make the configuration a little more easy for us to manage, or really just less lines. I don't think you have to do it this way. I think if you wanted to plug in lots of just a separate line in your configuration for each possible term, you could do that. It might start getting a little, you might have to be really careful about the order. But here's the regular expressions we used. And this is, I also wanted to just include this as text in the slide because it's actually really hard to see once you're in your settings. And I will show you our settings here. As I get down here, you can just see that it gets a little tough to see some of these as they're pasted in. So I'd kind of just recommend constructing your expression and then pasting it in. It's just a little hard to see in that text box. And then finally, I just thought I'd share some usage data that we pulled that helps us see maybe some things that aren't working so well. So you'll see this, this is just the query string straight up from Google Analytics, from pages, limited to pages where the search interpreter filters were applied. You'll see that second string there, better than the movies, and there's another equivalent version kind of down the page. That is actually a book title. So that is an example of a search that would return, where search interpreter is returning worse results for someone looking for that particular book title. So we actually added that to our terms to exclude. Sometimes these, bestsellers are going to come up and you'll realize, oh, a lot of people are looking for this, and the search interpreter is getting in the way, applying that movies filter. So we can just exclude it in our terms to exclude. And that is really it for the presentation and for our configuration. I'm happy to answer any questions or further dive into our configuration.
Thanks, Tara. We do have a few questions. The first one is, will the slides be shared after this? I'm definitely interested in looking more at these regex terms you're all using, and I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, we'll definitely share the slides. I usually like live demo, but I thought in this case having the things kind of broken out into the slides would be helpful for all of y'all later.
And you're going to get an automated recording of this afterwards. I don't know that we'll get the slides in time to get those into that automated recording that's being sent out, but we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel as well. And we'll make sure that the link to the slides is in the description of the YouTube channel. Okay, and questions are still open. So if you have more questions, there's still time to add them. But next question is, can you explain more about the first match applying under special terms? We are not sure how that works.
Okay, I have to wrap my head around it. And we ended up tweaking I think one of the things that came up was that we use for kids. We kind of included that as a term. If you're, looking for books about turtles for kids, it's going to apply that. I think that the big thing to look out for is if you've got, I think up here we have DVDs for kids. So that's a more specific term if that comes up. And down here is just for kids. So you kind of start with the most specific term at the top and then the less specific term down at the bottom. And that should all work out in terms of applying those things you want. But if you had for kids at the top before DVD for kids, then that for kids would apply. So just the juvenile filter, that DVD filter would not also get applied. Does that make sense a little bit?
If you still have a question, ask it. We have time. We have a question. Can you demo the back-end process in Aspen? I think there are a couple people that want to kind of see a little bit more of your live configuration. I guess you're doing it now. But.
Yeah. Yeah, these are special terms. I don't know exactly specifically what to see. It's really not, it's not that exciting up here, as I notice. It's just the we ignore a lot of, we just don't use a lot of these configuration options here. We might change that at some point. But really it's literally, we're just processing most of the formats, and then these we've all decided to do some things special with in the special terms. So that's why we're skipping those. And then down in the special terms, we've got listed out, you know, basically the term here that's going to trigger if you search vinyl record or records, it's going to apply that phonograph format. You know, a couple versions of PlayStation will apply all of the PlayStation formats, PS4, PS5, etc. And again, I don't know, I like using regular expressions. I think it helps break my brain a little less as far as, you know, what order things have to be in. And, you know, so essentially we've got like kind of one line in our configuration for each specific filter or filter combination that we want to apply. So you can see some of this here.
Next question is, any patron feedback after rollout?
I joked with Sierra Chastain or two that we've heard very little at all, and that feels like success in our world. We have not gotten a lot of patron feedback. It's possible our library staff have gotten some feedback, and that hasn't filtered its way up the chain to the consortium. But mostly people have just been happy. We haven't gotten complaints from libraries or librarians. And we were really cautious with our rollout. So we're kind of trying to make it just be like, the goal is always just subtly better. I can't tell why, but it just works better. So yeah, we didn't go big. We went really cautious with our rollout. And I think we'll be adding terms, you know, as we test and refine it a little more.
All right. What happens to materials with an audience of general?
We don't have an audience of general, so I don't know if that answers your question. We did make an assumption that we kind of decided adult is assumed. Like, if you're looking for adult movies, that's kind of a specific genre that it's likely not in our libraries. I don't know, depends. I worked at a university library before that did have a collection like that for a specific class, but generally you're not searching for like adult books or adult movies. So that's sort of maybe our version of the general, but we just have adult, teen, and juvenile audience filters.
Okay. Next question. If I wanted to dip my toe in when it comes to using Search Interpreter, you have a few starter suggestions that would get me big bang for my buck. Doing a major project config like SWAN is intimidating.
Well, definitely just copy us as much as you want to. Feel free to. I think the big bang for our buck, I think the video game formats and the languages are a real big bang for your buck. I do recommend the juvenile stuff, like, you know, kids plus book, DVD, movie, whatever format. If you have kind of a version of that will work with your particular audiences and formats, and a lot of the formats are the same for you, then those would be that's kind of what we focused on as well, actually. Just it's hard to find juvenile materials. So I think our youth and teen librarians are really happy with that stuff. And yeah, the video games have always been a real challenge to find. So that was a big and easy win.
Right. Is there anywhere libraries could share their terms and settings with each other?
Oh, I mean, Slack is where I've been sharing them. We could have, I'm sure an answer to this might be just to have a few more examples fleshed out in the documentation, which I'd be happy to add to the Aspen Help Center.
Great. Next question, any unexpected issues?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. No. We did do quite a bit of testing. And we've made a few little tweaks here and there. I will say, in the time since we launched Search Interpreter, for example, the picture book format was added. So we kind of had to go back and tweak some things for that. And we were using a picture book subject term. That was like the one subject term facet that we were applying. So that is something to keep in mind as new formats get added, you might have to go in and tweak some of those settings as well.
Okay, would it be possible for you to send us files with the terms and facets, etc.? Oh, my questions jumped that you configured.
To send files, yeah, we could try to copy and paste. It was just be a lot of copy and pasting, unfortunately. I don't know that there's a good way to like export the configuration.
I love the idea of getting that into the Help Center too. I think that would be really helpful,
Yeah.
Especially a couple different examples.
Yeah, I think you might get more out of just having a couple examples, especially with the, using the regular expressions.
Any thought given to presenting the alternate searches as a did you mean suggestion?
I think that might be a Mark question.
I think we probably could. I think it might be a little confusing to patrons to have them understand the facets applied, but I think if we could figure out the best way to format it, we definitely could.
Yeah, we definitely liked the idea of defaulting to applying the facets, and then of course there's the there's that restore original search, which I should note, this particular library their wording or info, I don't know if this is a warning or an info box, but it's a little bit hidden, so you might also be careful how your styling sort of impacts that. But we wanted to default to using the restore original search and kind of stick to that mantra of like, most of the time this is going to help you, but you've got this kind of opt out if you want, instead of opting in, just knowing that most of the time people are not going to opt in and would probably still benefit from some of these, pretty obvious like video game formats, for example, that will help them.
Okay, how did you communicate this new tool with member libraries?
I'm trying to reach back. We have a couple communications channels. We have a monthly, we call them fireside chats that started in the pandemic and just kept going indefinitely. So we talked about it at that monthly fireside chat. So now it's included in the newsletter. Just trying to get the word out there as much as possible. And we sort of teased it that we were working with our user groups on those settings. So we didn't have an extraordinarily long lead time, but it was maybe 2 or 3 months of sort of between Search Interpreter kind of becoming available in a release and then launching it live to our members. I want to say it was maybe 3 months. I could be misremembering that. But we just tried to get the word out through our various groups and via all the channels that we've got.
Okay, we are almost out of time. So if you still have a question and your question didn't get answered, I'm sure Tara would be more than happy to answer questions in Slack, probably in the general channel, I guess, unless Tara, you have a different idea. We also have a UX channel if you wanted to try there. But other than that, thanks for joining today. This was custom development that Tara did with Grow for Library. So if you have ideas on how to make this better, or if you have an idea for your own custom development, please reach out to me. My contact info is on the screen. And thank you again to Tara and for all of you for coming today. I think it was a great introduction to the search interpreter. Have a great day. Bye.